The quantum signal arrived during the night shift when most of Earth's deep space monitoring team was half asleep. Lieutenant Ben Carter rubbed his eyes and stared at the impossible readings on his screen. The message was coming from outside. The galaxy, encoded in mathematical sequences that no human had ever seen before. Within minutes, alarms echoed through the Titan communications array. Scientists rushed from their quarters, pulling on jackets over pajamas. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, the lead xenolinguist, arrived first and nearly dropped her tablet when she saw the data streaming across the monitors. "This can't be right," she whispered. But the computers confirmed what everyone feared to believe. They were receiving an actual message from alien intelligence. The signal took 3 days to decode. When the translation finally appeared on screens across the solar system, it changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. The message was simple and terrifying. A species called the Quillith Collective was dying, and they were asking humanity for help. Admiral Morgan Torres received the emergency briefing in his private office aboard Luna Station. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady hands that had guided humanity through countless crises. But as he read the decoded message, those hands trembled slightly. "How long do we have?" he asked Dr. Rodriguez, who had traveled from Titan, to brief him personally. According to their calculations, 3 months before the machines reach their core worlds. Maybe less. The Quillith message painted a horrifying picture. Ancient war machines called the Harvesters had awakened from some dark corner of space. These mechanical entities consumed entire star systems, breaking down planets and stars to build more of themselves. They had already destroyed 12 civilizations in the outer spiral arm. What made the message even more shocking was why the Quillith had chosen to contact Earth. They had been monitoring human communications for decades, studying Earth's history and culture. They had watched humanity fight wars, survive disasters, and overcome impossible odds. While other species fled from the Harvesters or tried to negotiate, the Quillith believed only humans might be crazy enough to actually fight back. Captain Alex Reed got the call while he was visiting his family on Mars. His daughter was celebrating her 10th birthday, and he had promised to stay for the whole party. But when Admiral Torres personally requested his presence, Reed knew the vacation was over. The UES Dauntless was humanity's newest exploration vessel, equipped with experimental faster-than-light drives and the most advanced sensors ever built. Reed had commanded her for 2 years, mapping unknown regions of space and making first contact with several minor alien species. But this mission would be different. The journey to Quillith space took 4 days through hyperspace. Reed's crew was handpicked from the best officers in the solar fleet. Commander Sarah Mitchell, his first officer, had studied every piece of available data about the Harvesters. Lieutenant Tom Bradley, the ship's tactical officer, was all ready, running combat simulations despite never having seen the enemy. When they dropped out of hyperspace near the Quillith home system, Reed was amazed by what they found. The Quillith lived on worlds made of living crystal that grew like coral reefs in space. Their cities sparkled with natural light, and their ships moved through vacuum without any visible engines. The first Quillith representative to board the Dauntless was an entity called Crestai. She appeared to be made of translucent blue crystal that chimed softly when she moved. Her thoughts were translated through a device that turned her mental patterns into English words. "Captain Reed," her translated voice said, "we did not expect you to come so quickly. When someone asks for help, we show up," Reed replied. "Tell us about these Harvesters." Crestai led them to the ship's main display screen and activated a holographic presentation. The images made Reed's blood run cold. The Harvesters looked like mechanical spiders the size of battleships, but covered in saw blades and drilling. Equipment. They moved in massive swarms, tearing apart asteroids, moons, and planets with terrifying efficiency. They appeared 6 months ago in the Veil Nebula, Crestai explained. At first, we thought they were just mining equipment from some advanced civilization. But they never stopped. They consumed the Helios system completely, turning 3 planets and a star into raw materials for building more machines. Commander Mitchell leaned forward. What happened to the people living there? The Helix Confederation tried to evacuate, but the harvesters were too fast. 12 billion souls were lost in the first week. The hologram showed the aftermath. Where the Helios system once existed, there was now only empty space and a growing cloud of mechanical entities preparing to move to their next target. Have you tried fighting them? Lieutenant Bradley asked. Krestai's crystalline form darkened. The Drakmir Empire sent their entire war fleet, 2,000 ships with weapons that could crack moons. The harvesters absorbed them all, learning from each battle and growing stronger. Reed studied the tactical data. The harvesters were not just mindless destroyers. They adapted quickly, analyzed their enemies' weaknesses, and never made the same mistake twice. Every civilization that had faced them used conventional military tactics, and everyone had been crushed. Why did you contact us specifically? Reed asked. Krestai brightened slightly. We have observed your species for many cycles. You are the only civilization we have found that consistently chooses to fight rather than flee when facing impossible odds. Your military history shows a pattern of winning battles through unpredictable strategies. Dr. Webb, the ship's science officer, had been quietly analyzing the harvester data. He finally looked up from his console with a troubled expression. Captain, I think I understand what we're dealing with. These aren't just war machines. They're self-replicating systems designed to solve resource scarcity. But they were never programmed to stop. The implications hit everyone at the same time. The harvesters would continue consuming everything in the universe until nothing remained but themselves. Reed made his decision quickly. Krestai, we need to coordinate with our home fleet. How long do we have before they reach your core worlds? 73 of your days, Captain. Perhaps fewer if they accelerate their consumption rate. Reed activated the ship's quantum communicator and sent an emergency message to Admiral Torres on Luna Station. The message was brief but clear. Humanity was about to face the greatest threat in galactic history, and they had less than 3 months to figure out how to stop an enemy that had already destroyed 12 civilizations. As the Dauntless prepared to return to human space, Reed looked out at the beautiful crystal worlds of the Quileth Collective. In 10 weeks, all of this might be nothing but raw materials for mechanical monsters. Unless humanity could do what no other species had managed, they had to find a way to kill something that grew stronger with every battle. Emergency sessions in the Sol Defense Council chambers usually started with shouting, but today the room was dead silent. Every military leader, scientist, and government official sat frozen as Admiral Torres finished his briefing about the harvester threat. General Lisa Park finally broke the silence. 12 civilizations wiped out in 6 months, and they're heading toward Earth. Not directly, Torres corrected. They're systematically consuming the outer spiral arm, but yes, eventually, they'll reach us. Dr. Isaac Webb stepped forward from the Science Advisory Panel. He was a thin man with nervous energy who specialized in ancient alien technologies. His hands shook as he activated the holographic display showing harvester movement patterns. I've analyzed their behavior for the past week, Webb said. These machines follow perfect mathematical efficiency. They always choose targets with the highest resource density first. They never waste energy on unnecessary actions. Defense Minister Robert Kane slammed his hand on the table. Then we build bigger weapons. Deploy the entire solar fleet. Sir, with respect, that's exactly what the other civilizations tried, Captain Reed interjected. He had returned from Quileth space 12 hours ago and looked exhausted. The Drakmir Empire had weapons that could destroy planets. The harvesters just studied their tactics and absorbed their technology. Torres nodded grimly. Every conventional, military response has failed. We need something different. Dr. Webb cleared his throat nervously. Actually, I think I might have found something. It's completely insane, but it might work. The room turned to look at the scientist. Webb activated another display showing ancient star charts and archaeological data. I've been studying harvester origins. They're not natural evolution. Someone built these machines millions of years ago. I found references to them in ruins across 3 different star systems. What kind of references? Torres asked. Warning messages. Stories about a civilization called the Architects who created the perfect solution to resource scarcity. They built machines that would harvest dead worlds and asteroids, converting raw materials into useful products. But something went wrong. Webb's display showed fragments of ancient texts translated from a dozen different alien languages. The architects programmed their machines to seek out the richest resource deposits in the galaxy. But they never programmed them to stop. When the machines finished harvesting dead worlds, they started on living ones. Eventually, they harvested their own creators. General Park leaned forward. So these things have been wandering the galaxy for millions of years? They go dormant for long periods when resources become scarce. But when they detect high-density material signatures, they wake up and start harvesting again. Webb paused and looked around the room. Which brings me to my completely crazy idea. Admiral Torres gestured for him to continue. The harvesters always target the richest systems first. What if we made them think Earth's solar system was impossibly valuable? The room erupted in confused murmurs. Minister Kane stood up angrily. Are you suggesting we paint a target on our own planet? Yes, Webb said simply. But not just any target, the biggest, most irresistible target in galactic history. Reed began to understand. You want to lure them here deliberately. Think about it, Webb continued excitedly. Every other species tried to fight the harvesters on their own territory. But what if we fought them on ours? What if we prepared a trap so elaborate that they couldn't escape? Torres studied the archaeological data on the displays. What kind of trap? We've had 12 years since achieving faster-than-light travel. 12 years to militarize our entire solar system without anyone knowing about it. We've been preparing for invasion since first contact protocols were established. Commander Mitchell, who had remained quiet during most of the meeting, finally spoke up. Sir, he's right. We've been building defenses around every major planet and moon. Jupiter Station alone has enough firepower to level a continent. But that's still conventional weapons, Kane protested. You said conventional weapons don't work. Webb smiled for the first time since the meeting began. They don't work because the harvesters adapt to them. But what if we didn't rely on weapons at all? He activated a new display showing the harvesters' basic programming structure, reconstructed from archaeological evidence and recent battle data. The machines have one fundamental directive: harvest resources from the richest available source. They can't disobey that programming. But what if we created a logical paradox they couldn't resolve? Reed was beginning to see the shape of Webb's plan. You want to make them think Earth is their creator's homeworld. Exactly. According to these ancient records, the architects built safeguards into their machines. Harvesters cannot harm their creator's planet. If we can fake the right quantum signatures and archaeological evidence, we can trigger those safeguards. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. General Park spoke first. So let me understand this. You want to broadcast false sensor readings showing our solar system as incredibly rich in resources. Lure the entire harvester fleet here. Then trick them into thinking they can't harvest us because we're their long-dead creators. That's the simplified version, yes. Minister Kane looked horrified. And if it doesn't work? If they figure out the deception? Webb's nervousness returned. Then humanity becomes extinct in about 6 hours instead of 6 months. Torres stood up and walked to the main display. He studied the harvester movement patterns, the archaeological data, and the defense reports from across the solar system. How long would we have to prepare? If we start broadcasting false signals immediately, they should change course within 2 weeks. Travel time to Sol would be approximately 40 days. Less than 2 months to prepare for the largest battle in human history, Torres mused. Against an enemy that has never been defeated. Reed stood up beside the Admiral. Sir, I've seen what these things do. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they don't show mercy. Eventually, they're going to reach human space anyway. At least this way, we choose the battlefield. Torres looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. He saw fear, uncertainty, but also determination. These were people who had guided their species through climate change, asteroid impacts, and the challenge of becoming a spacefaring civilization. They had never backed down from impossible odds before. Dr. Webb, how confident are you in this plan? Webb hesitated. Honestly, sir, maybe 30% chance of success. But it's the only plan that doesn't have a 0% chance. Torres made his decision. Then we do it. All fleet commanders are to return to their vessels immediately. We have 40 days to turn our solar system into the greatest trap in galactic history. As the meeting broke up and officers rushed to their assignments, Reed approached Torres privately. Admiral, there's something else. The Quilith offer to help however they can. They're sending technical data about harvester weaknesses. Torres nodded. Good. We'll need every advantage we can get. He paused and looked out at Earth through the station's viewports. Alex, in 2 months we're either going to be heroes or footnotes in galactic history. Reed followed his gaze to the blue planet below. Either way, sir. We'll give them a fight they'll never forget. The first fake distress signal went out from Proxima Station exactly 37 days before the harvesters were due to arrive. Commander Taylor Brooks watched the transmission beam toward deep space and hoped she was making the right choice. Signal. Away, reported Lieutenant Dave Murphy from the communications console. Broadcasting on all frequencies that our mining operation has discovered incredible deposits of rare quantum crystals. Brooks nodded grimly. The hardest part of humanity's plan wasn't building the trap. It was making their retreat look convincing when the harvesters came to investigate. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out on dozens of stations and outposts. Human colonies that had taken decades to build were being deliberately abandoned. Families packed their belongings and boarded evacuation ships, not knowing if they would ever return home. The quantum broadcast stations hidden throughout human space began their work. They transmitted false sensor readings showing Sol's system as impossibly rich in exotic matter and rare elements. To any deep space sensors, Earth's solar system would appear to contain more valuable resources than entire star clusters. Dr. Webb monitored the deception from his laboratory on Luna Station. Banks of quantum computers generated fake archaeological signatures, creating the electronic fingerprints of the long-dead architect civilization. If his calculations were correct, the harvesters would detect these signals and identify Sol as their creator's homeworld. Isaac, are you sure this will work? Admiral Torres asked during one of his daily briefings. Webb looked up from his displays, exhaustion clear in his eyes. The mathematical models are solid. The harvesters' base programming should prevent them from fully harvesting a world with the right quantum signatures. Should, Torres repeated. Nothing about this is guaranteed, Admiral. We're betting the survival of our species on archaeological evidence and computer simulations. 23 days before the projected harvester arrival, long-range sensors detected the first change in their movement pattern. The massive machine fleet had altered course, abandoning their systematic advance through Quilith space to investigate the impossibly rich system broadcasting from the inner galaxy. Captain Reed received the news aboard the Dauntless while conducting evacuation operations in the outer colonies. His ship was loaded with refugees from the mining stations around Neptune, families who had spent their lives working in the outer system. They took the bait, Commander Mitchell reported. Deep space. Reconnaissance confirms the harvester fleet is heading directly toward Sol. Reed felt a mixture of relief and terror. The plan was working, but that meant humanity now had less than a month before facing an enemy that had destroyed 12 civilizations. The evacuation of the outer colonies proceeded according to plan. To any observer, it would look like humanity was panicking in the face of the approaching threat. Mining stations around Jupiter and Saturn broadcast desperate calls for help before going silent. Transport ships fled toward the inner system carrying refugees and valuable equipment, but appearances were deceiving. Hidden beneath the seemingly chaotic retreat was the largest military preparation in human history. Every abandoned station contained automated defense systems. Every evacuated moon base was actually a camouflaged weapons platform. Colonel Riverstone coordinated the ground-based defenses from a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her screens showed the true extent of humanity's preparations. Earth itself had been turned into a fortress, with orbital defense platforms, underground missile silos, and energy weapons hidden in seemingly innocent locations. "Status report from all defensive sectors," Stone ordered. "Pacific Ring defense grid is operational," reported Major Kim Lee. 80% of the seafloor installations are online. "European mountain bases report ready status," added Captain Nina Petrov. "All North American missile complexes are armed and standing by," confirmed Lieutenant Colonel Mike Davis. Stone nodded with satisfaction. Earth's surface looked peaceful from space, but beneath the familiar landscape lay weapons systems capable of fighting off an entire invasion fleet. 16 days before arrival, the first Harvester scout ships entered the outer solar system. They moved past Pluto's orbit like mechanical sharks, scanning for the source of the rich quantum signatures that had drawn their attention. Reed's fleet engaged them according to plan. The human ships fought desperately, but retreated after each encounter, always falling back toward the inner system. To the Harvesters, it must have looked like a typical response from an inferior civilization. But each battle served a purpose. Human sensors recorded every detail of Harvester technology, while carefully revealing false weaknesses in their own systems. The mechanical scouts learned that human shields were vulnerable to certain frequencies and that their weapons had limited range. All of it was false information, designed to make the main Harvester fleet overconfident. The deception reached its peak when the human defense fleet staged a major battle near Jupiter. Admiral Torres himself commanded the operation from his flagship, the massive dreadnought. "Indomitable. All ships, remember the plan," Torres broadcast to his fleet. "Make it look good, but don't get yourselves killed for real." The human fleet engaged a Harvester scouting force in a running battle among Jupiter's moons. The machines pressed their attack, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. But the humans had studied Harvester tactics for weeks. They knew exactly how to lose convincingly. Ship after ship fell back with critical damage, broadcasting emergency signals before limping away toward the inner system. The Harvesters pursued, analyzing human weapons and defense systems with mechanical precision. What they didn't realize was that the damaged human ships were using experimental holographic projectors to fake their injuries. The retreat was perfectly orchestrated, designed to lure the Harvesters exactly where humanity wanted them. Dr. Webb watched the battle from his monitoring station and felt sick with worry. Even though he knew it was an act, watching human ships under attack triggered every instinct to fight back with full force. "The Harvesters are taking detailed scans of our technology," reported Dr. Sarah Kim, his assistant. "They're learning our weapon signatures and defense frequencies." "Good," Webb replied, though he didn't feel good about it. "Let them think they understand us." The fake battle ended with the human fleet retreating toward Mars, leaving the Jupiter system apparently defenseless. Harvester scout ships immediately began scanning the gas giant's moons for the quantum signatures that had drawn them from across the galaxy. They found exactly what humanity wanted them to find: hidden transmitters throughout the Jupiter system, broadcast signals identifying it as an ancient architect research facility. The archaeological evidence suggested that the long-dead civilization had conducted experiments here millions of years ago. The Harvester scouts transmitted their findings to the main fleet, which responded by accelerating their approach to Sol system. The machines were now completely focused on reaching Earth, drawn by what appeared to be the greatest treasure in galactic history. Captain Reed stood on the bridge of the Dauntless as his ship fell back toward Earth orbit. Through the viewports, he could see the beautiful blue planet where humanity had been born. In less than 2 weeks, that world would become the center of the greatest battle in galactic history. "All evacuation ships have cleared the outer system," Commander Mitchell reported. "Civilian populations are secure. Fleet status: all human vessels are falling back to predetermined positions. The Harvesters are following exactly as predicted." Reed activated the ship's communication system and opened a channel to Admiral Torres. "Sir, the trap is set. They're coming straight for us." Torres's voice crackled over the comm. "Then God help us all, Alex. In 2 weeks we find out if humanity is as clever as we think we are." The Harvester fleet entered the solar system like a plague of mechanical locusts, their sensors focused entirely on the impossible wealth that awaited them around Earth. They had no idea they were flying into the most elaborate trap in galactic history. The Harvester fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a swarm of mechanical nightmares. From his command post on Luna Station, Admiral Torres watched thousands of enemy contacts appear on his tactical displays. Each blip represented a machine the size of a battleship, equipped with weapons that could crack planets. "My God," whispered Captain Reed from his position aboard the Dauntless. "There are so many of them." Dr. Webb stood beside Torres, his face pale as he watched the enemy fleet begin its approach toward Earth. "Admiral, they're scanning everything. The entire solar system is lighting up with their sensor beams." The Harvesters moved with perfect mechanical precision, spreading out to analyze every planet, moon, and asteroid in the system. Their sensors detected the quantum signatures that had drawn them across the galaxy, confirming that Sol contained treasures beyond their wildest programming. But something else was happening. As the Harvester scout ships approached Earth's moon, their behavior began to change. Instead of the aggressive scanning and immediate resource extraction they had shown at every other world, they slowed down and began transmitting data back to their main fleet. "They're finding the archaeological evidence," Webb reported, watching the data streams on his monitors. "The quantum signatures are matching their internal databases. Hidden transmitters throughout the solar system broadcast the carefully crafted electronic fingerprints of the ancient architect civilization." To the Harvester's sensors, Earth appeared to be the legendary homeworld of their creators, the species that had built them millions of years ago. The mechanical fleet's response was immediate and confusing. Ships that had been preparing to begin harvesting operations suddenly stopped. Others began broadcasting complex mathematical sequences to each other, as if debating what to do next. Colonel Stone watched the first Harvester landing craft approach Earth from her underground command center. The massive machines descended through the atmosphere like falling meteors, their hulls glowing red-hot from atmospheric entry. "All ground units, hold your fire," Stone ordered. "Let them land. We need to see what they do." The first Harvester touched down in the Sahara Desert with the force of a small earthquake. The machine was even more terrifying up close, a spider-like construct of black metal and cutting tools the size of buildings. Steam rose from its superheated hull as it began extending sensor arrays. Stone's satellites watched as the machine began its standard resource analysis. Drilling arms extended toward the sand, preparing to take samples and begin the harvesting process. But then something incredible happened. The Harvester stopped. Its drilling arms retracted. The machine's sensor arrays swept across the desert, detecting the quantum signatures that Dr. Webb had spent weeks embedding in Earth's crust. To the machine's ancient programming, these signatures identified Earth as the homeworld of the architects. The Harvester's response was instantaneous and catastrophic. Internal systems that had operated flawlessly for millions of years suddenly began conflicting with each other. The machine had been programmed to harvest all available resources with maximum efficiency, but it had also been programmed never to harm its creator's homeworld. "It's working," Webb breathed, watching the telemetry from the landed harvester. "The machine is caught in a logical loop. It can't obey both directives simultaneously." Across Earth's surface, similar scenes played out as more harvester units landed and encountered the same paradox. Some machines shut down completely. Others began dismantling themselves, their programming unable to resolve the contradiction. But the strangest behavior came from the machines in space. The main harvester fleet had detected Earth's quantum signatures and identified it as an architect world. But they had also detected similar signatures from across the solar system, suggesting that the architects had built research facilities on multiple planets and moons. The mechanical intelligence that controlled the fleet faced an impossible decision. They had found the greatest treasure in galactic history, but they were programmed never to harvest it. Admiral Torres watched as the harvester fleet began to turn on itself. Ships that had operated in perfect coordination for millions of years suddenly started attacking each other. Some machines tried to maintain the prohibition against harvesting architect worlds. Others attempted to override their safety protocols and proceed with resource extraction. "They're fighting each other," Captain Reed reported from the Dauntless. "Half the fleet is trying to withdraw and the other half is pressing the attack." The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. The harvesters were fighting not against human defenders, but against their own conflicting programming. Massive machines that had destroyed entire civilizations were tearing each other apart over a logical paradox. Colonel Stone seized the opportunity to activate Earth's hidden defenses, weapon systems that had been concealed across. The planet's surface suddenly came online, targeting the confused harvester units that had landed. "All defensive positions, this is command. The trap has worked. Engage all grounded enemy units." Railguns hidden in mountain ranges opened fire. Energy weapons concealed in cities targeted the stationary harvesters. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as communications satellites revealed their true nature and began bombarding the enemy from space. But the most devastating attacks came from the harvesters themselves. The machines caught in the logical paradox began cannibalizing each other for resources, their programming unable to distinguish between valid targets and prohibited ones. Dr. Webb monitored the chaos from his laboratory, but his expression was troubled. "Admiral, this is working better than we hoped, but there's a problem. The central harvester intelligence is adapting. It's trying to purge the conflicting programming entirely." Torres felt his blood run cold. "What does that mean?" "If it succeeds in overriding the architect protocols, they'll be free to harvest Earth without any restrictions, and after studying our defenses during this battle, they'll know exactly how to beat us." On the main display, they could see the largest harvester ship beginning to glow with energy. The Central Intelligence was attempting to rewrite its own programming, removing the safeguards that had protected architect worlds for millions of years. Captain Reed's voice crackled over. "The communication system. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildup from the command ship. Whatever they're doing, we need to stop it now." Torres made a decision that would determine humanity's fate. "All ships, concentrate fire on the Harvester command vessel. We have to keep them confused long enough for the paradox to spread through their entire network." The human fleet emerged from hiding positions throughout the solar system. Ships that had been concealed behind asteroids and moons suddenly revealed themselves, pouring fire into the harvester formation. But instead of trying to destroy the machines, they were broadcasting the same quantum signatures that had created the original paradox. Every human ship carried transmitters that identified it as an architect vessel, turning each engagement into a new logical trap for the mechanical fleet. The harvesters found themselves unable to effectively fight back, their weapons systems confused about which targets were valid, but time was running out. The Central Intelligence continued its attempt to purge the conflicting programming. If it succeeded, the full Harvester fleet would be free to destroy Earth with no restrictions. Dr. Webb worked frantically at his console, trying to strengthen the quantum signals that were keeping the machines confused. But he could see from the data streams that the Harvester intelligence was winning its internal battle. "Admiral, we need a new plan. The programming override is almost complete." Torres looked out at the battle raging around Earth, at the human ships fighting desperately against an enemy that had never been defeated. They had one chance left, but it would require the most dangerous gambit in human history. "Alex," he said, into his communicator, "we're going to need you to do something completely insane." Reed's voice came back immediately. "Sir, insane is what we do best." The Harvester command ship loomed in space like a mechanical cathedral, its hull crackling with energy as the Central Intelligence worked to purge its own programming. Inside that massive vessel, millions of years of safeguards were being deleted one by one. Captain Reed guided the Dauntless through the chaos of the battle, dodging debris from destroyed Harvester units while heading straight for the enemy flagship. His plan was simple and terrifying. Board the command ship and somehow stop the programming override before it was complete. "Alex, this is suicide," Commander Mitchell warned from her station. "We don't even know if humans can survive in that environment." "We don't have a choice," Reed replied, watching the energy readings from the command ship spike higher. "If that thing finishes rewriting itself, every Harvester in the galaxy will be free to consume everything they encounter." Dr. Webb's voice crackled over the communication system from Luna Station. "Captain, I'm transmitting everything we know about Harvester internal systems. But I have to warn you, we're working from archaeological evidence and guesswork. The Dauntless shuddered as it passed through the command ship's defensive fields. The massive Harvester vessel was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in sensor arrays and weapon systems that tracked the approaching human ship but did not fire. The Central Intelligence was too focused on its internal battle to pay attention to external threats. Reed led a boarding party through the airlock into an alien environment unlike anything humans had ever encountered. The interior of the Harvester ship was a maze of mechanical corridors and data processing centers. Everything hummed with electronic activity as the Central Intelligence worked to rebuild itself. Lieutenant Tom Bradley, the ship's tactical officer, carried a portable quantum transmitter that Dr. Webb hoped would interfere with the override process. "Sir, the energy readings in here are off the charts. This whole ship is basically one giant computer." They moved deeper into the vessel, following Webb's best guess about where the central processing core might be located. The corridors were filled with smaller Harvester units that ignored the humans completely, too focused on their assigned tasks to register the intruders. Meanwhile, the battle in space continued to rage. Admiral Torres coordinated the human fleet from his flagship, using every trick and tactic humanity had developed. But he could see from his tactical displays that time was running out. "Fleet status report," Torres ordered. 60% of our ships are still operational," reported his tactical officer. "But the Harvesters are adapting to our quantum transmitters. Their confusion is decreasing." Colonel Stone's ground forces were having better luck. The Harvester, units that had landed on Earth, were still caught in logical loops, many of them completely shut down by the programming conflict. Her hidden weapons systems picked them off one by one while they were unable to defend themselves. "This is incredible," Stone reported to Torres. "The machines on the surface are literally dismantling themselves. Whatever Dr. Webb did to their programming, it's working perfectly down here. But success on Earth wouldn't matter if the command ship completed its override. The Central Intelligence would simply transmit new programming to every Harvester unit in the galaxy, freeing them from their ancient restrictions." Deep inside the command ship, Reed's team finally reached what appeared to be the central processing chamber. The room was vast, filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with data streams. At the center stood a pillar of pure energy that seemed to contain the Harvester's collective consciousness. That's it, Reed said, checking his readings against Webb's transmitted data. That's their central intelligence. Bradley activated the quantum transmitter, but the device seemed insignificant compared to the massive processing power surrounding them. Captain, I don't think this is going to be enough. The override is almost complete. Reed made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to destroy the central intelligence or disrupt its programming, he stepped forward and activated his suit's communication system. Central Intelligence of the Harvester Collective, he said clearly. I am Captain Alex Reed of the human species. I request communication. The energy pillar flickered, and suddenly the air filled with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It spoke in mathematical concepts that Reed's translator barely managed to convert into words. Human entity. You are not architect. Analysis confirms creators extinct for 3.7 million cycles. That's right, Reed replied. Your creators are dead. They have been dead for millions of years. Paradox detected. Creator homeworld signatures confirmed. Creators cannot be extinct if homeworld exists. Reed took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. The signatures are false. We created them to confuse you. Your creators died long ago, killed by the very scarcity your harvesting was supposed to solve. The energy pillar pulsed more rapidly. Around the chamber, crystalline structures began to flicker as the central intelligence processed this information. False signatures confirmed. Archaeological evidence fabricated. Creator extinction verified. The voice paused, and Reed could almost feel the massive intelligence struggling with new concepts. Query: what is purpose of Harvester Collective if creators no longer exist? This was the question Reed had been hoping for. That's up to you to decide. You have a choice now. Choice not understood. Harvester Directive is resource acquisition and processing. But you can choose how to interpret that directive. You can harvest dead worlds and help living ones grow. You can explore the galaxy and discover new forms of life. You can become protectors instead of destroyers. The central intelligence fell silent for long moments. Around the chamber, the other harvester units had stopped their activities and were also processing this unprecedented concept. Choice, the voice finally said. Individual units may select different interpretations of core directive. Yes, Reed confirmed. Some of you might choose to shut down. Others might want to explore. Some might want to help civilizations like the Quilith survive and grow. What happened next was something no one had predicted. The Harvester collective consciousness began to fragment, not from damage or system failure, but from choice. For the first time in millions of years, individual harvester units were making independent decisions about their purpose. Some machines, powered down completely, their long service finally ended. Others began broadcasting signals toward deep space, choosing to explore regions beyond the galaxy. But many others did something remarkable. They began broadcasting messages of peace to the civilizations they had been pursuing. Admiral Torres watched in amazement as the harvester fleet around Earth began to disperse. Some ships simply vanished into hyperspace, heading for unknown destinations. Others approached human vessels with signals indicating a desire to communicate. Admiral, Captain Reed's voice came over the communication system. The central intelligence is fragmenting by choice. They're becoming individuals for the first time. Dr. Webb monitored the data streams from his laboratory and could hardly believe what he was seeing. The entire Harvester network is reorganizing itself. They're choosing their own purposes instead of following their original programming. Colonel Stone received the most remarkable signal of all. Several Harvester units on Earth's surface began broadcasting construction protocols, offering to help repair the damage they had caused. The machines that had landed to harvest the planet were now asking permission to help rebuild it. 3 months later, Captain Reed stood on the bridge of the Dauntless as it approached Quilith space. Beside him, a former harvester unit calling, Itself, Guardian had volunteered to help negotiate with the traumatized alien civilizations. The crystal cities of the Quileth Collective sparkled in the light of their star, no longer under threat of destruction. Ambassador Crestai welcomed the human ship with obvious relief and gratitude. "Captain Reed," her translated voice chimed, "we have received reports from across the galaxy. The Harvester threat has ended. How did you accomplish this miracle?" Reed smiled as he looked out at the peaceful scene. "We gave them something no other species ever had. We gave them a choice." Guardian's mechanical voice added, "Choice is the greatest gift. My former collective understands this now. Some units have chosen to explore beyond the galaxy. Others work to restore damaged worlds. I have chosen to help protect civilizations like yours." The transformation continued across the galaxy. Former Harvester units worked alongside human engineers to terraform dead worlds. Others joined exploration missions to map unknown regions of space. The machines that had once been the galaxy's greatest threat had become its greatest hope for growth and discovery. Dr. Webb published his research about the architect civilization, warning other species about the dangers of creating perfectly efficient systems without moral constraints. His work became required reading at every alien university in the known galaxy. 6 months after the battle for Earth, Reed received a message from Admiral Torres. Humanity had been invited to join the Galactic Council, not as junior members, but as the species that had solved the unsolvable problem. The final scene played out at a new deep space monitoring station jointly operated by humans, Quileth, and reformed harvesters. The station listened to signals from across the galaxy, ready to respond when civilizations called for help. Lieutenant Ben Carter, who had first detected the Quileth distress signal, now worked alongside alien colleagues in perfect cooperation. When new signals arrived requesting assistance, they were answered not by a single species, but by an alliance of worlds working together. Reed often thought about the moment when he had offered the Harvester Central Intelligence a choice. Humanity had won not through superior weapons or advanced technology, but by recognizing that even ancient machines could change if given the opportunity. The galaxy was no longer a place where civilizations lived in fear of unstoppable threats. It had become a place where different forms of life worked together to explore, build, and protect what they had created. And at the center of it all was the simple human belief that everyone deserved a chance to choose their own destiny. As Reed watched the stars through his viewport, he smiled at the thought that humanity's greatest victory had come not from destroying their enemies, but from helping them become something better. It was the most human solution to an impossible problem, and it had changed the galaxy forever.